Good morning, class. I thought I'd jump on here and give a brief week 11, modular 11 lecture. I know there's a video that sort of goes through a little bit of Susan Gaspell's Trifles. I'm going to really sort of hit on sort of the historical aspect of it, um, talk a little bit about the drama research paper that you should see the topics now, sort of go through some of the guidelines, what you're going to need for that. Um, I'm still grading some SA2s. Some of those are coming along really well, which that's good. So once I'm able to grade the SA2s, and obviously you have a discussion board question this week. So once I get those things graded, hopefully the grades will be up to date. I know some of y'all have already done the extra credit 1, 2, and 3. If so, I've applied those at least 1 and 2. If if you did the extra credit 3, that was mainly meant for the poetry essay. That will be added after I grade um, after I grade your essay. I'll go ahead and include that into that particular grade. If you did extra credit 3, I will be talking about extra credit 4, which will really be your final extra credit deal. We'll probably be talking about that either later this week, or I may just wait and kind of do it after our spring break. Remember, our spring break starts next Monday, which would be March 31st, and it basically goes until April 6th, which is that Sunday. We will be starting back up on April 7th. Obviously, it's a Monday. And then that's really going to be the last of our holidays until the end of the semester. So if you look, we have the week of the 7th, the week of the 14th, the week of the 21st, the week of the 28th, and then May 5th is actually the last official day of the semester. And then we have 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, for the final exams. More than likely, final grades are going to be uh, due to the college by the end of business, which is around 6 o'clock on Thursday, May 8th. So we don't really have, um, after this week, I mean, when you go to spring break, you only have a week. We have what, 1, 2, 3, 4. I would say 4.5 weeks when we come back on the 7th, and that's all we have. Um, and the big thing really, you're going to have the discussion question, the discussion board this week. Then we go away, and then there's one more discussion board for a dollhouse. When you come back, I believe that one is due on April 13th. Some of this stuff will start opening up a little bit um, as we move through the weeks and the days, so you can kind of work ahead a little bit. I know some folks are working really far ahead, and I'm kind of curving that just a tad, just so I can get kind of caught up on grades, and just to make sure that sometimes when folks work ahead, they're doing the right thing and they're not turning in stuff that is, totally different than what they need to turn in. I have modified um, some of the information as it relates to the drama research paper, as it relates to sources. I'll talk a little bit more about that here soon. There is one last thing too. I mean, I guess you can kind of call it maybe your fifth extra credit is, these weekly assignments, like the low stake assignments, some of these weekly writings or quizzes, anything that's not a major essay or a test. I will drop your lowest one. If you have one in mind that you want me to drop, I can only drop one. Email me which one you want me to drop, and I can go ahead and do that. If you want to wait until it gets, closer to the end, you can. But I definitely want to try to probably drop your lowest assignment as it relates to a low stake assignment by the time before May 5th. So if you don't let me know, I'm just going to go in and sort of randomly look at which one is the lowest for you and just go ahead and take care of that. But if you have something in mind that you want me to do, I will. Again, it can't be a major exam. It can't be a major essay. Anything else is sort of free game. Otherwise, I hope everybody is doing well. We are, basically this is week 11. So we don't have that much longer left. in the spring semester. So a lot of things could happen, between now and really the week of May 5th. Your grade is either going to continue to go up, which I hope for everybody that it does. Um, the other thing is we got enough time that you can cause your grade to go down, which we hope that's not the case. I know some folks are really sort of in the red as it relates to the grades, meaning they're basically failing at this point. Depending on where they're at, they're 59 or lower. I sent out some emails to those folks, just let them know, basically after this week, you're really going to have 4.5 weeks. We're starting to run out of extra credit chances. We're starting to run out of assignments. And really, sort of the last few assignments are, the research paper and the final exams are big, big chunks of your grade. So if you got a 20 in the class or, 42 in the class, it may be very difficult to even pull that up to a 70, which is considered, a C, and for most programs, a study passing. So if you don't think within the next really 5.5 weeks, you can pull your grade up to a 70 or higher, you may want to start the process of withdrawing from the class. And, either taking it again in the summer or taking it in the fall, whatever the case may be, where you're a little bit more focused on it. Maybe you got a lot of stuff going on in your life outside of school. Maybe you got multiple classes. Because otherwise, if you don't pull the grade up and you don't make the 70 or higher, the chance is that your grade is probably going to just, depending on how the quality of your work moving forward, and if you turn stuff in on time, you may just, your quality of work may not be up there where it will help you get to a 70 or higher. So your grade's either going to be sort of where it's at, or it could start to get lower if the work that you're turning in is not up to par from previous works. But I can't withdraw you. You're going to have to go through that process. You're going to have to talk to the registrar. You're going to have to talk to maybe your advisor. If you're dual enrollment, you may have to talk to your high school coordinator and see how all that works. But just emailing me or saying, hey, I want to withdraw or want to drop the course, that's fine. But you have to start the process. There's paperwork that you have to do that goes through electronically. And then once you fill out everything that you need to fill out, then I get the notification for me to do my part. But until that happens, I can't drop. So I'm hoping that, most can, stick it out and pull the grade up. But I do know, once you get into the 20s, 30s, and 40s, especially the last 5 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever's left, it's very difficult to do basically in any class. And that's with the extra credit. So I would definitely think about that. Why cause more stress on yourself if you don't think, and if you kind of know if you can, pull up a grade that's in the 30s, can you pull that to a 70? Can you make a 70 in the class or higher? Because at that point, you should forget about trying to make a B or an A, because that's not going to happen. If you're failing the class, you probably, at this point, you're just wanting to get a C and pass. So that's probably going to be your focus. You're going to say, hey, within the next 5 weeks, can I pull my grade up? It's a 45 in the class. Can I pull that up to at least a 70? And if you really answer that question and answer no, then I probably wouldn't waste any more time trying to do it. I would go ahead and get the withdrawing process started. So in case you are having, maybe you got another class, a math class, that your grade is kind of low in there, but you're close enough to pass, you can take your energy and focus on that particular class. And it'd be better, withdrawing from one than failing two, so to speak, is basically what I'm getting at. But again, decision's yours. Once you sign up for this course, we just assume that you're adult and the way that you approach this and the way you rationalize where your grade is at and what you need to do as it relates to, withdrawing or not withdrawing. We do offer this course yearly. So whether you withdraw or by chance you stick it out and still kind of fail, you can take the 10-week version in the summer, which is it's really compact and it's quick, or you can wait again and take another 15-week version of it in the fall. We do offer, not only the online component like we have here. I think there's a hybrid. There's also some in-person classes too. So if you're more of an in-person type student, you may want to, think about start coming to in-person classes, because a lot of folks think they can do online courses and they really can't. There's a lot going on in their life. It seems, fairly trendy and maybe kind of cool, and hey, I can do this, and that usually lasts about the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then they realize, hey, there's a lot of work here to do. And there is. I mean, we do basically the same amount of work in both, but with in-person classes, there's a lot of interaction with the actual, instructor with the students. So a lot of the stuff that we have to do sort of online, we can do in person as discussion. So you're not necessarily writing or typing as much as you are like are doing online, when we can talk about this and verbalize it in class. All right. So let me get to the information, the historical information about Glaspell's Trifles here. And let me go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully you should be able to see this. Let me see. Here we go. So Trifles, yes, by Susan Glaspell. The real murder, right? There was a real murder here. This is where her short story, and we'll talk her short story sort of helped help her create the sort of the play version here, the drama version. But the real murder here was early in the morning of December 2nd, 1900. John Hossack was killed in his bed by 2 blows to the head from an axe. His wife, Margaret, claimed to have slept through it. She was arrested for murder on the day of the funeral, tried, and convicted and sentenced to life in prison. However, the Iowa Supreme Court overturned the life sentence, and a second trial resulted in a hung jury. So she was free. She went free. Susan Glaspell, who wrote Trifles, was one of the only female reporters. So kind of keep that in mind. She was the only female reporter who covered the trial. And she used the Hossack's murder as a loose inspiration for her play. There is a book called Midnight Assassins that discusses the real case. If you are interested in it, it's a fascinating read. Here's the picture of the Hossack family in 1892. John, the man who was murdered. As you can tell, I guess this might be John here. It could be here. Let me see. I can barely tell with this. Margaret, his wife, accused of the murder, are seated. So I guess these two. Here's Margaret, and there's John. The others are their children. This photograph was taken 8 years before their murder. So if you look at it, man, he's got a lot of children. If these are other children, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at least. And I guess these could be children too. So that's a big family. Susan Glaspell's article in the Hossack case. As a reporter for the Des Moines News, our Trifles author was one of the first to report on the crime, as well as one of the only female journalists covering the crime. So that's kind of interesting, thinking of the time, in the 1900s. The Hossack murder was extremely sensationalized. It gained national attention, and every major newspaper in the country was paying attention to it. So Here, this is one sort of question you can kind of ask yourself as knowing this historical uh, tidbit about this particular play. What do you think it was about this murder that grabbed the country's attention? And you can go in a lot of different ways. Probably we have a wife, we have a mother who, pretty much put an axe, right, two blows to her husband and to the father of her children's body, and subsequently killed him. So during that time, especially when you only have a female, one of the only female journalists at the time covering the crime, that's also something that was um, interesting in itself. But to have a woman, mother, and a wife basically kill her husband and the father of her children, that was probably just, you didn't hear on a national level, especially in the 1900s, stuff like that. I mean, today it's sort of, you hear about mothers and wives and husbands and fathers killing each other pretty much, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Just turn on your local news or your national news or read your papers or go online and look around. I mean, you're going to see a lot more of this stuff now. So it doesn't make, a lot of these cases now are just, oh, okay, John killed Jane or Jane killed John at that point. But back in the 1900s, it was a little bit different because we didn't have the 24/7 news cycle. We didn't have social media. We didn't have these 24/7, you know, news organizations either. Context and historical setting. This is one of those plays where historical context and setting are extremely important. What historical facts and circumstances are especially relevant to this play? So that's something that you kind of want to keep in mind while you read this play. Um, in the next couple of weeks, I think it's modular 13. You're going to have a chance to watch both A Doll's House and this particular play in action, to kind of give you a sense of some of this historical setting and context. And a lot of times when you read plays, you really need to see the sort of the film version of it as well. Historical background. In the 1900s, when the murder in this play takes place, is loosely based on what took place. So, women in the United States did not have the right to vote. This did not change on a federal level until 1920. Women were extremely unlikely to be chosen to serve on the jury of a criminal trial. Why might we consider this to be a problem today, especially in a case where the defendant is a woman? So that's something else that you can kind of think about. In 2025, a lot has changed since 1900 or even 1920 when it comes to women and their rights. If you think back to the very first unit, the short story unit, we looked at um, Chopin's piece. I think that was the first week. She sort of kind of went through this whole deal with women's rights and stuff. You can kind of tie a lot of that connection into this too, in some ways. Of what she went through as a woman, thinking that her husband was dead. She thought she was going to have freedom when eventually she died of that heart attack when she realized the husband was not dead. Um, so a lot of what happens in this play is sort of similar to what's going on um, with the protagonist in Chopin's piece as well. Though this was beginning to change at the time of the play's writing, the ideal proper place for women had for a long time been the domestic sphere, basically the home. And if you look here, here's another important question to sort of kind of keep in mind and maybe try to answer when you look at that particular discussion question, because it could sort of tie into this. How are these historical facts pertinent to the theme of the play? Thinking about Trifles from a feminist critical perspective. In what ways are women's concerns portrayed in Trifles? So that's something you can kind of look at. You have um, the women who were friends that came to kind of see what was going on with our protagonist. But then you also have the men that were there too. You can also, ask some of these questions. Do the women characters in the play, Miss Peters and Miss Hale, have urgency? Or agency, rather, in this case. This is a phrase feminist critics often borrow from sociology. To say someone has agency means that they have the ability to act and make decisions independently. So, do we have that? Do we see this in a 19th century or 1900 uh, drama that's basically unfolding while we read? In what ways are issues related to patriarchy and or resistance to its present in the play? Um, there are some discussion questions you can kind of look at here. I know the book, the page number is going to be a little bit different. It says what key events have occurred before the start of the play. So even, you can kind of think of what has gone on before the play. Why do you suppose these events are not presented in the play itself? What are the connotations of the word trifles? That's something you might want to look up in a online dictionary. And again, from the book, what are the trifles to which the title refers? How do these trifles advance the play's plot? So just some things that you can kind of keep in mind. Some things that you can probably, definitely answer as you read or as you finish up the play. Some of these, could be fair game to ask, let's say, on a final exam. So you might want to, jot these down and keep these on a piece of paper somewhere so you can come back and refer to them. You probably will have a sort of like a study guide, so to speak, just like you did for the poetry exam. Um, I'm still trying to in the works of how I'm going to set up the actual final exam, but it will cover the two plays that we're going to be reading for this unit and probably the videos, the films of the plays. So make sure that you kind of have time to watch those as well and maybe take notes and stuff because with the print version compared to the film version, the director does take some creative liberties and some things do change. So, and a lot of times I like to base my questions on those changes from the actual text to the film just to see, hey, did you read the text? And hey, did you watch the film to catch the changes? So that's sort of the reason why we are looking at those films in Modular 13. Some additional questions. What are some of the symbols in the play? What does each of them represent? If you looked at the other video that's in this week's um, modular, it sort of goes through a little bit, um, in deeper notions about some of these symbols and concepts and that type deal. There is a short story, like I mentioned earlier, of the play. It was also written by Susan Glaspell called A Jury of Her Peers. What is the significance of the title of the play? So, again, Trifles, and then we look at A Jury of Her Peers. One is the drama, the one that we're reading, and then there's the other one, which is the short story. So, if you have time, you might want to um, look at and read the short story to see what some of the differences are, if there are any differences compared to the play. And when you're thinking about maybe a research paper topic, if you don't like the ones I have, that could be something maybe that you can kind of use as a way to maybe compare and contrast the two different versions of really the same murder. Justice and the law. What is this play doing with concepts of law and justice is sort of the main question that you also want to kind of keep in mind as you read through this play, as you watch the version in Modular 13 as well. Many critics have thought that the women's action in the play point to a disconnect between the letter of the law and the law's ability to give many right a fair trial. And again, depending on which way that you approach this, obviously, if you are female, you're probably going to approach it from the female's perspective, the point of view. If you are male, you may have a different viewpoint on this. Taking into account what you know about the historical circumstances of the play, do you think Mrs. Hale and Miss Peters did the right thing? So that really kind of boils down to the end, right? Did they do the right thing when it came to Miss Wright? Difference between quilting and knotting. One of the trifles in the play is whether or not Miss Wright was going to quilt or not the quilts she was working on. As in the case of many of the trifles in this play, the question is more significant than it seems. The final stage of quilting is to attach the top, batting and backing together. This can be done in two ways. One way is quilting, is to sew elaborate patterns on it. The simpler but just as effective way is knotting, is to sew a heavy thread through the pieces using large stitches, cut the thread, and tie knots into it. The symbolism of knotting is the fact that Mrs. Wright killed her husband by tying and knotting a rope around his neck. This is a simple, not elaborate, but very effective way to kill a man. So that's sort of the slight difference, right? You know, the historical version of it was that the wife took an axe to her husband, but in this case, they used a rope. And here's sort of this is what knotted or tied quilt looks like. Okay, so that's the historical sort of aspect of the play. So let me pull up and we can look at here momentarily. Let me pull this over. We can look at some of the other things to come here. A couple things I want to point. I did put out see here if I can share this again. I did upload this. It's basically how to cite drama using MLA format, especially when you're writing your research paper and when you're starting to do your discussion questions. You need to not just answer this question sort of on surface value. You need to actually include textual evidence, quotes from your actual dramas, quotes from, possibly the films, if you went ahead and kind of watched those. There's a certain way to cite drama. As you can tell here, this is actually coming from the next play that we're going to look at, Aspen's A Dollhouse. So you might want to go through and read this stuff. So you make sure that you're quoting correctly and you're not losing points, really easy points. I mean, these are really easy points you shouldn't be making or shouldn't be losing. Because I know some of y'all lost some points with how you quoted with your short story, essay, and some folks are losing points because they didn't look at, because I uploaded a similar file for poetry during the poetry unit, and some of y'all didn't read it, didn't look at it, forgot it, whatever the case may be. But some of y'all are losing those very easy points because you're not quoting poetry correctly in your essay too. And some of y'all are just lacking the works cited page. So anytime that you quote from somewhere, whether it's a primary text, which is basically the text that we're reading for the class, or secondary material, which is basically research material, you need to provide a works cited page. If you use it, direct quotations or paraphrase in your particular writing. If you don't use any quotes or paraphrase or summaries from a particular text, then clearly you don't need to list it in your works cited page. But with these discussion questions, it's asking you to sort of find particular passages and areas and pieces of that particular text to really use quotes from and analyze those quotes. And you're going to have to do that for your research paper. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention. It's up there. As we get closer to when the research papers due, I want to be moving this file from one modular to the next, just so you can be mindful of it. So it's going to follow you around, basically, is what I'm getting at. And you can't really have the excuse, well, I didn't know how to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's just like the poetry. The poetry version of this was up there for the last 5 weeks, too. You just have to go back and either search for it, read it, You can also look in your e-text. I think there's some information in there, how to quote, short stories, novels, poetry, drama, that type stuff, film. Or you can always do a Google search or look on, YouTube. There's a lot of how-to videos on YouTube. You just have to type in what you're trying to do, and I'm sure you will find one that will accommodate your needs. You just have to go about taking the time and actually doing that. Some of this stuff you should have probably learned in maybe 10th or 11th grade, definitely by 12th grade of high school if you're a dual enrollment student. If you're taking literature courses, you should already know how to quote short stories, poems, dramas. If not, then I don't know what to tell you, because I mean, I knew how to do this stuff when I was in ninth grade. Um, and I went to, Glenn Academy in Brunswick. So if you're in 11, I mean, most of y'all had to have a C or higher to, in 1101 to come to 1102, you learn how to quote prose writing, which is basically novels and short stories as it is. You learned how to use Galileo, check out books, quote from books, journal articles, websites. So a lot of this stuff that I'm showing you is probably more or less review, because there's nothing too much that has changed. I mean, we went from, this is going to say MLA 8, but MLA 9, I mean, when it comes to citing poetry and drama and that stuff, type stuff, not a lot has changed too much. The stuff on the works cited aspect of it might, but if you use a works cited generator, and you can find free ones of these, just go to Google and type in MLA 9 works cited generator. It will help you with your own works cited page. You just have to follow the instructions, what it wants you to do. Okay, so let's look. So that's here. You'll find additional information, also in your lessons and assignments page. That's where you're going to find that other video that goes with this particular play this week. The research paper information is there. Again, I'm going to probably change this up. You're not going to see the essay 4 on your end. So the final exam essay, there's going to be something, you will have a final exam. It will cover some aspects of the drama unit. It probably won't be another heavy writing exercise, just because your research paper is going to be heavy enough, I think. And that's going to be due like a week before the actual final exam is going to be due. So I need to have enough time to grade all these research papers, not only for your particular class, but 3 others, and also, have time to grade final exams in their classes as well as your class. So this is the actual assignment for this week. If you look, we'll come back to the research paper. If you look, you click here. It gives you sort of what you need to do. This is the question. The women's language is essential in the play. See how the men react to it. How do you feel about the gender roles shown through language in this play? So I give you some really detailed instructions that you should follow. This is sort of a grading criteria, but there is a rubric. If you want to, you should be able to click here. This is really what I'm gauging you on, or will be grading you on. So you can kind of use this as a checklist as well to make sure that you're doing the right thing as it relates to your post. The other thing that you're going to need to do, besides answering the question and posting your own response, you're going to have to go back and at least comment on one other person in the class's response. As you can tell here, there's several that's already posted. There's several that's already replied. I'm trying to reply to these as much as I can as well. So you might see, like here, I replied to Morgan's. I will try to get to as much of these as I can. Like I said, I may not get to everybody, especially if you wait until it gets closer to the deadline. I probably won't be able to respond to everybody then, because it seems like everybody likes to try to wait until hours before it's due sometimes. And it's just hard by that time. If, I got 10 people within a span of an hour uploading stuff before, a couple hours before it's due, I'm not going to be able to necessarily get on there on a Sunday night and really hit everybody as it relates to comments. You will get a grade on it. But as it relates to me, making comments on it, early like I am now, and some of these comments will kind of, you have the ability to go back, I think, and edit your own response. So if you got a lower grade, and today's the 25th, and this thing is not due until Sunday, the 30th, you have a chance to go back to improve that grade if you want to. Now, again, that's optional. If you're fine with a 76 and don't want to take my comments or suggestions to make it maybe an 86 or 96, then hey, a 76 is a C, it's passing. You can move on to next week. But I'm seeing sometimes students will upload their response, but then they will forget to go back and actually comment on one of their peers' response. And really, like I said in the instructions, it's there. So it's not like one of those things I'm just throwing out there now. It says here, after posting your response, you must comment on at least one classmate's post. Each comment should be about 100 words, adding new insights and questioning assumptions or engaging in a thoughtful discussion. So don't just say, yes, I agree, and don't give too much substance after that, or no, I don't like this. I mean, be constructive criticism. You can respectfully agree to disagree, but make sure that, your responses back to your peers are respectful and meaningful. They're more than just 25 words. They're nearly 100 words. I can easily check that by just copying and pasting your response, and I can see if your response, because your response needed to be about 250 words, I can just put that into a Microsoft Word, and it will count the words for me. Now, I'm not going to take off too many points if you're, a couple points off here or a couple words off here or there. But if it says 250 and you only give me 50, then yeah, I'm gonna have to take some points off because obviously you didn't follow the instructions that are clearly written up there under the instruction area. So please follow instructions so you're not losing, again, some really easy points. Um, the other thing is just be careful. We know, AI is out there. I've taught a few folks using AI over the last few weeks, not just in this class, but other classes. Um, you may want to, run your work through an AI detector to see if it's flagging. Um, Generally, they kind of let you slide with about between 0 and 20% of AI writing. That's usually sort of the fuzzy area. Some of these things do send off false positives. But if you start to get higher, 21%, and then, between 21 and 100, obviously, if you get 100% on an AI detector, it's AI. I mean, don't come back and, I didn't do that. I don't know what. Well, if we check it over 7 or 8 different AI detectors and they're still relatively high, 190, 80, I mean, come on, it's AI. The gig's up. So make sure that you're checking your work that is not AI, because I definitely do check the research papers. If something just seems off to me, if it looks like it's written, robotically, or, something of, a higher level, it's like grad level writing from like Yale or Harvard, then yeah, I'm going to be checking. The other thing with AI is that it doesn't necessarily format the paper the way you need to format it correctly. It says it will, but it don't. It will also give you bogus sources as placeholders, meaning it'll give you sources to show you how it should look in a particular paragraph or a paper. Problem with that is when I go to your works cited page and I start looking around for these sources on Google and Galileo and some of these databases, and they say they don't exist, and I see that same source in multiple students' papers from other classes, then I know you're going to an AI program and getting this stuff. Um, so if you can find it via AI, we can find it via AI. And a lot of times We can just go to an AI program and just copy and paste about half of your paper and ask if this is AI writing or not. And that will tell us too really quickly. So be wary of that. We are checking. Um, and it's just like plagiarism. I mean, you get caught with it, you will get a 0 first offense. You foolish enough to do it a second time, you're going to fail the class automatically with no questions asked. We will have all the documentation of it. I mean, you can try to fight it, but I'm here to warn you that we're going to have everything saved and documented where this stuff is coming from, especially if you plagiarize. Safe Assign kind of tells us that real quick. So just be wary of that. Be mindful. Don't trust everything that you read or hear about AI writing this and doing that. It's good for certain things, yes. It's here to stay. It's probably just going to get better as time goes on. But right now, I can tell you that some of the papers that it's producing, they're not very good quality papers. They leave out a lot and they put in a bunch of crap that looks like it's legit when it's really not. They call them AI hallucinations. It looks correct, it looks right, but in the end, when the actual human reads them, we know it's a bunch of BS. Okay. So enough of that. I think y'all been warned. I hope we don't have to have that discussion again. I hope you don't have to see the results of that on a particular assignment where you get a 0 and it drops you down 2 letter grades. The other thing, the research paper topics right here. So what I kind of changed, and a lot of it too is I've had some students early try to write this research paper. So I had to go in there and kind of tweak some stuff up. Topics are still the same. So you're still going to use MLA 9 format. You're still going to use Times New Roman. You're going to double space. You're going to do everything that you did on the, essay 1, essay 2 when it comes to that. This particular, the length of the paper needs to be 7 to 10 pages or 1750 to 2500 words with at least 6 scholarly sources. Now, these sources must be 3 scholarly books and 3 scholarly journal articles only. No websites. They have to be 3 books. Now, the books could be ebooks. The journal articles can be e-journal articles, but you're going to have to go to a library. I pretty much would like for you to go to a Coastal Pines Technical College library. You can use a public library. You can, if you're a dual enrollment student, you can use your own high school library if you think there's enough stuff there. The reason why I'm going with this now is that in the past, I've seen folks who try to get, bogus sources, passing off as internet sources, which they were basically AI hallucination sources. And they pop up on, Jane's paper. The same source pops up on Jimmy's paper. And just by looking at the works cited, I don't really need to read the rest of your paper, because if you have 10 sources and 7 of them are all AI generated, then I know the paper's AI. I mean, I can just put it into a checker. There we have a particular one that checks about 10 different AI sites. And, if it says 99% AI and 1% human, I mean, there's no reason for me to read those 10 pages, especially if we check multiple ones. So this particular paper, you need to have, the 3 scholarly books, 3 scholarly journal articles. They must come from some library, college library, public library, or your high school library if you're doing enrollment. You also need to use the 2 primary sources, which would be, really, when you think primary, there's kind of 4 if you count the films, but definitely the text of the 2 plays, because the only plays that we're looking at are Trifles and A Dollhouse. So you do need to sort of include them. If you're doing sort of like a compare and contrast type deal here. And the directions, really, the purpose of this research paper is to conduct a detailed analysis of the plays A Dollhouse by Espin and Trifles by Glaspell, focusing on the themes related to gender dynamics, social societal impacts and literary analysis. Your paper should thoroughly understand the plays and incorporate scholarly research to support your analysis, as well as quotations and paraphrasing from the primary sources, your plays. And I give you 6 choices here that you can read. You just need to pick one. If you number 7 is not there, but that could be a writer's choice. It still has to deal with our dramas. But if you have something different in mind that relates to a dollhouse and trifles, email me what you plan on doing before you start doing it, just so that I know where you're going, if you're going to have enough to give me 7 to 10 pages. And again, the works cited page is going to start on another page. So let's say you end on page 8. Your works cited page starts on page 9. Some of you are putting that works cited page on the same page where you're ending, and that's not really what MLA wants. And then some of y'all are just not even giving me a works cited page, which that throws up some red flags there too. Because a lot of times AI won't generate a works cited page, and if they do, they don't necessarily do it correctly. So just throwing that out there to make sure that you kind of understand where we are heading with this. If you look, today's the 25th, right, of March. This thing is due on the 27th. So basically, I mean, you got a month and 2 days. So I guess if my math is correct, that's like 32 days that you have to work on this paper. If you work smarter and not harder and take a little bit each day working on this thing, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. It shouldn't be that hard to get it, get it in and before the deadline. Now, if you wait until a week before it's due and you got to get 6 sources and go back and pick out the quotes and stuff, not only from those sources, because you're going to be quoting from your 6 sources as well. There's going to be a Model A paper that a student done in the past for me up here. It's going to show you how to, go about doing the quotes, integrate those, and all that stuff, and the stuff from the play that you're going to need. I can tell you it could be kind of disastrous, because that's usually when I see folks, they try to either plagiarize the paper, they use multiple different AI programs, they try to use somebody else's paper from another class or from another college. They buy a paper. That's when they start doing the really silly stuff that's going to hurt their grade. Because chances are you're probably going to slip and get caught doing one of those if you're not careful. Now, some of y'all can work really well under pressure, and that's fine. You think you can do the 7 to 10 pages in that amount of time? Great, knock yourself out. To me, I would kind of do this in stages, because you just never know what's going to happen between now and this time next month. Especially if you got work, you got other commitments outside of this particular class. You got a family. If you're, dual enrollment, you may have prom, dances, graduation. A lot of different things, sports going on. So I wouldn't wait to really start working on this. And as I said, for like essay 1 and essay 2, you can always send me drafts if there's time allowed, meaning since you have 32 days, you can start drafting this thing once you think comfortable about getting all your sources, reading through those, taking your own notes, pulling out the quotes that you want to use both from the plays or the films and scholarly sources. I don't mind looking at your drafts. You just need to send them in a timely manner. Tutor.com is also available. You can, schedule a session with a tutor there. They will look at your paper. That's just another set of eyes. I'd recommend that, again, if you haven't sent me a draft or haven't used Tutor.com for anything up to this point, I would definitely do it for this essay, for this research paper, because it is a big chunk of your grade. And you don't want to lose a lot of points for really easy, silly things that you shouldn't be losing points for. Format. Some folks are not even using Microsoft Word still. They're just copying and pasting stuff into the text box. I can't put comments on that stuff. Only thing I can do is read it and grade it. So if you don't care about the feedback, then I'm just going to read it and give it a grade. Same thing with PDF files. Some of y'all are still uploading PDF files. I need you to send it as a Microsoft Word document. You have a free version of Microsoft Word built into your student email for Coastal Pines. It's free. Use it. It makes it easier for me to go in there and highlight and use the comment suggestion option to put comments and suggestions in your margin of your paper. Otherwise, I can't do that really easily with a PDF file either. I might as well just read that and grade it, and then post whatever grade you got. So again, this is sort of the big thing that you're going to have to kind of keep in mind. It's due in about a month's time. There will be some information about the final as we get closer. Modular 12 is open. Some of these will start to open up here soon. I probably will go ahead and just release this right now. Well, it'll open up Thursday. I just leave it. The problem is some of y'all are getting too far ahead, and some of y'all are doing the right thing, but then there's others that are not. So I don't want that to be sort of a confusion thing where, hey, yes, that's great that you're reading ahead, but you're not really asking questions before you start the work, and the work that you're turning in is not really following what the question asks. Plus, that would kind of keep me grounded a little bit when it's grading. It also may tamper off because, I mean, there's 20 some students in the class. They start seeing 5 or 6 people, working 3 or 4 weeks ahead and already posting stuff. They may start getting kind of anxious and thinking stuff is due when it's not. So all of this right here is going to open up after Thursday, again, for Modular 12 as it relates to the dollhouse, that particular, because some of y'all have already jumped ahead, and that's why I kind of had to lock it down. That's not due until the 13th. I think I just kept this one open. Well, no, I got some locks on that. I may open some of this because it is just videos as we get closer to spring break. But some of the other stuff I kind of just locked down for right now. I'll probably open up as it gets later into April. But just to sort of for me to get grades caught up and not to sort of really overwhelm the other students who have not jumped 2 or 3 assignments ahead. We're going to put some kind of releasing conditions on some of these weekly modulars. They will probably open up, but they will open up, whatever that Thursday is of that week after midnight. Okay. So as it relates to this week, that's pretty much all I have. Again, once you start drafting your research paper, you can start sending me drafts if you like. If you have a different topic in mind that deals with the 2 plays that you want to do compared to, instead of the 6 that I have online, let me know before you get started. Again, there's nothing really going to be due after the 30th because at least between the 31st and the 6th, we have spring break. So after March 30th, because March 30th is when that Trifles discussion board is due, you don't have another discussion board until April 13th. So what I would suggest, and again, this is just my suggestion, depending on what you plan on doing. If you are not really going on a vacation, you're not really doing a whole heck of a lot during next week, I would go ahead and start, narrowing down a particular research paper topic you want to do. And I would get out there and get those 6 sources from the library, the 3 books and the 3 journal articles. That way, that will save you a lot of time because once we come back, and we will start back on the 7th, you're only going to have, 1, 2, maybe if you count the 7th, you will have only 3 weeks to write the paper at that point. And if you still have to go out and get sources, then that's just going to be a good bit of time consuming on your part because you're still going to have to read those sources. So even though it says 3 weeks, If you take a week and have to get the sources and read them and basically pick a topic at that point, now you only have 2 weeks. And I can tell you, you can kind of tell when a research paper is written within the last 48, 72 hours. Um, it's just easy. It's easy for us to read and kind of tell, hey, this person had 32 days, but they only wrote this paper within the last 2 days. Um, and their grade kind of suffers for it for a lot of them. Again, some folks can, kind of can do that, work under pressure and stress and come out with a decent paper. But I see a lot of students try that and they barely even get a C on this research paper. If they wait a day or two before it's actually due without getting, any feedback on their drafts, because usually they don't even do a draft. That first draft they call their final draft when really it's a crappy draft. So I would be mindful of the time because you do have a little bit of time. It's going to be really your responsibility of when you plan on starting this. And as I say, I can't beat this with a dead horse too much. Don't wait until 72 hours, 48 hours, or 24 hours for this thing is due. And don't wait and send me a draft, on the 26th either. Probably the last time I'm going to be able to really look at drafts just because, I got other classes that are going to be sending drafts. I'm actually going to have to go to an IFCC meeting for the college in Macon on Monday, the 21st. So I'll probably be leaving out on Sunday to go up there because it's an all-day meeting. I will be back basically in town again on the 22nd. So I'm thinking probably the last time I can really look at drafts would probably be, on Thursday, April 24th, because that week's going to be very busy for me. And that will at least give me enough time. If I do have some drafts before the 24th, I should be able to get most of them back by the 27th. But again, I would be utilizing tutor.com in case I can't get a draft back to you, because I'm going to be looking at, besides your class, 3 other classes that are dealing with a research paper deal. So again, if you start sending me drafts on the 25th, 26th, and on the 27th when it's due, I probably won't even get to them. Just because, some folks in my other classes may start turning their research paper in before the 27th, and with grades going to be due probably on the 8th of May, I'm going to have to start getting grades going. So I'm really going to probably be in grade mode when we get to Friday, the 25th of April. All right, so enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and end this now. I hope you have a good rest of your week for week 11. I hope you have a safe and wonderful spring break, whatever you do. Hopefully you get, spend some time with family, friends, go on a trip, get as much rest as you can, kind of work on, getting the stuff that you need to get back, because when we come back for modular 12, week 12, you don't have, like I said, 3.5 weeks at that point. So good luck with everything that's coming up, and, reach out if you need any help. And I hope to have a good bit of your poetry essays graded, as we get closer to the end of the week, because I'm going to take a couple days off next week as well, to spend some time with family and maybe go on a trip or something. But I will be in Camden on Monday and Golden Isles campus on Tuesday. But after that, I won't be back in the office until we come back on April 7th. So have a good rest of your Tuesday. And I will probably talk to you if I don't hear from you, by email or whatever. I'll probably see you when we come back on April 7th. Have a good one.